Our next guest is the Honourable Mark Patterson. He is the Minister of Rural Communities, the Associate Agricultural Minister. Welcome to the show, Mark. Have you ever used AI yourself at all?
Oh, look, I'm a complete technophobe, Michael, so I'm probably going to be the last one surviving with the cockroaches. But, yeah, interesting developments, aren't they?
I just thought you might use it for some of your speeches in Parliament. Just say, give me 100 words on this.
Well, I think there's a danger that actually ends up happening at some point. I mean, it is going to be tremendously disruptive to the workforce, and I just don't know that we're in any way, shape or form prepared for it. It's obviously got some enormous potential and utility, but, it's developing so fast, and will society be able to develop with it? So, that's something we've all got to be thinking a lot more about, I think.
Yeah. Hey, listen, at the end of last year, and I meant to talk to you about this, but obviously last year just sped past. You've now been a minister for over a year. You're, as I said, the Minister of Rural Communities, the Associate Agricultural Minister. But there was a report that came out at the end of last year, I think right at the start of December in actual fact, where you, Todd McClay, Simon Watts, Andrew Hoggard, put out a media release relating to the independent review on New Zealand's biogenic methane science and targets. Do you remember that?
Certainly do, yes.
Now, on that particular case, the panel's final report found that reducing New Zealand's biogenic methane emissions by 24% by 2050 would satisfy the goal of achieving no additional warming. And in scenarios where global emissions of greenhouse gases do not reduce rapidly in the next couple of years, a reduction of those biogenic methane levels by 14 to 15% would also satisfy the goal of reaching no additional warming by 2050. Can I ask what the practical consequence of that is? Does that mean that you're not going to be taking, if you like, an interventionist or progressive role in reducing biogenic methane, or are you just going to let technology weave its wonderful way?
Yeah, a little bit of that. We yet to, we've received that paper and we're yet to make formal announcements on what our response is, but we've made it pretty clear, I think, all the parties in the coalition that we won't tolerate, culling as being the dropping in stock numbers as a strategy. We're looking to technical biological fixes, of which there are a number, and I think that the alarm was where you had 47%, I think it sits in the current legislation. That's a very, very high number and unlikely to be attainable in our pasture-based system. So, getting a guide at a more modest level is helpful. There's still a lot of debate, as you probably noted, around where that level should be. And in true scientific fashion, they gave us a range of scenarios. It would have been nice to get possibly one number that we could coalesce around. So they've left us a fair bit of work to do in terms of just nailing that down.
That's interesting. The Climate Change Commissioner, or the outgoing Climate Change Commissioner, Rod Carr, was on the show in December. And in my interview with him, he talked about New Zealand reaching peak cow and that this problem was going to solve itself. So he had his aim was he actually was saying, well, the truth of the matter is that we have to reduce. I mean, essentially he was saying we have to reduce cattle, and particularly dairy cattle numbers, but that the market will look after that. You would disagree with that?
Oh, yeah, we reject that wholeheartedly. And that has been a narrative that has been allowed to take hold, and I think we can dismiss that as being certainly the government's position. We do accept the direction of travel in terms of the environmental stuff, but we've got confidence in our farmers, our farming systems, our scientists that we can adapt to these challenges. And we're seeing at the moment the impact the dairy industry is going to be having in terms of our economic revival and in fact survival in some regards at the minute is going to be significant. I mean, this is a very, very important industry for New Zealand, and just to suggest that we can diminish it or reduce it is something we utterly reject.
Well, and that's the issue. The Prime Minister last Sunday, I think it was last Sunday, raised in his speech, no, it was before then, about how you need, if we're going to grow the economy, then we've actually essentially got to grow production. And agricultural production presumably will be one of those, along with tourism numbers. If you're going to increase production, does that mean that we need to have more intensive farming outcomes, Mark?
Well, we need to add more value to it, but ultimately, that's what we've been doing for years, is increasing production. If you look at the sheep numbers, I mean, if you look at the actual numbers, they've dropped dramatically, but the actual production coming off pure animals is still relatively the same. So it's not a sort of binary, but I think we are at the point where we do need to start addressing declining numbers, because you will lose production at that stage, and doubling the value of exports, which is our goal, becomes harder if we do that.
Okay, well, let's just think that one through, though, which leads to, if you are going to intensify production, or if you're going to increase the number of, not necessarily animals, but then, well, yes, I suppose you're going to have to if you're going to think about exporting more, whether it's milk solids or wool or sheep meat or whatever. The access to water has been a huge issue around, particularly in the South Island and in your region as well, but in the North Island as well too. And national policy statements on freshwater management have made access to water more difficult, not less difficult. You're doing some work on having a new national policy statement on freshwater management. Will it liberalise water use for agricultural purposes?
That is a huge focus, and for me in particular, within my regional development remit alongside Shane Jones, where I think we've got about 17 water storage and irrigation projects on our books, and we're looking to get as many of those enabled as we can. This is a huge opportunity for us. We have got water in New Zealand. We don't always have it at the right time, so let's store it where we can. And I mean, there's a great example down our way around the Falls Dam. That's a hugely valuable asset that we have to future-proof. And it leads to things like diversification, and not only to dairy, and probably not to dairy for a lot of cases. Now we're looking at horticulture probably more predominantly, and in areas like Northland that are hugely impoverished. There's massive potential. They've got the climate, they have the water, they can grow virtually anything up there. So it'll be a big push you'll see this year to try to get some of these projects over the line.
Well, because it seems that that's what's holding it back. I mean, you're talking about Central Otago as well, Manuhera Care with Falls Dam, but then I'm thinking of Hawke's Bay as well, where now they are restricting water access from their aquifer, which must inherently affect production, you would think, from horticultural sources. And then you've gone up to Northland, where there's a lack of investment to retain water. There's no shortage of water in Northland, but getting it to the right place. Does that mean the government's going to play an active role in funding particular projects, Mark?
Well, it will be a key focus for the Regional Infrastructure Fund, the $1.2 billion fund. It's one of our highest priorities. And talking of Hawke's Bay, you will have seen at the end of last year the old Ruataniwha scheme.
Ruataniwha,
it's now renamed the Tuki water scheme. It received some initial funding. They've got consents, and they're progressing to build stage, hopefully in the not too distant future. So we're starting to see some real progress, and that'll be a flagship early one getting off the ground.